to see what you've been doing and to kind of share their experiences too. So it'll be quite the year, I'm sure.
All right. And I'm Steph Lundgren. You've probably had lots of emails from me come across. I think this is Tammy my 4th year working with paras. And I have to say it's some of our best days here at the ESU when we get to work with those awesome paras out in our schools. I always say I would never have survived, especially my first year teaching, without my awesome para Shar in my classroom. Just each encounter with you guys is an awesome one. So we're so glad that you decided to take time out of your last few days of summer to join us. We'll kind of talk later about the trainings we have throughout the year too, but we hope that this isn't the last time we see you this year. So today's agenda, we're going to get to know our neighborhood superheroes first here. And then Sonia Suckup is going to join us and talk about trauma. And I think I should have updated that. Sean Schultz is also going to join us. So they are 2 of our licensed mental health practitioners here at the ESU. Then we'll take just a short little break to get up and move or use the restroom. And we'll come back and talk about what are your unique superpowers that you bring to your job. Then we'll talk about those superheroes at work. So we're going to actually cover 2 main topics of COVID-19 concerns and some technology concerns for the school year. And then we'll talk about a survey and some things that we have planned for the whole year. So that's kind of our agenda for this morning. So now some of you are together and some of you are Zooming alone. Can we make sure everybody mutes, please? Thank you. All right, so we kind of see these funny posts come across Facebook and things like that from time to time.
Oh, Steph, unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to figure out what our own superhero names are by looking at the first letter of your first name and your birth month. So I'm going to give everybody a minute to look at this. Okay, did y'all figure out your names? Mine is Daring Thunderbolt, which makes me crack up. My niece used to call herself Lightning Girl, and her mom was Thunder Girl. And I said that was better than being Thunder Thighs. But think about your name. Maybe share it out in your room. If you have a really great one, put it in the chat for us. We can take a look. Tammy, do you see any in the chat that are really funny?
Nobody's put anything in yet. I'm Invincible Thunderbolt, so we share January birthday.
Yes, you are Invincible Thunderbolt. Oh, that's great. No, what are you?
Invincible Thunderbolt.
Oh, yep. Great.
Let's see. Ninja Storm, Lightning, Power Hurricane. Oh, Power Claw.
I think that, you should make a name badge and wear that to the first day of school and just introduce yourself as that for the rest of the school year.
Wasp. Master Hurricane will send you down by, where is it? Is Florida having the hurricane?
Yeah, well, the East Coast, yeah.
Agent Blizzard.
All right, well, that's kind of fun. Just kind of a fun get to know you, and just think about what your true superhero name would be if you picked it too, and how would you depict yourself, because we want you all to see yourself as really powerful important people in the lives of kids and in the lives of schools and education. So, all right. All right, we have a little video to watch here. And so I think the sound should work okay. And hopefully, otherwise, go ahead and let us know in chat. Oh.
Admit it. At some point in your life, whether you were 5 or 85, you wanted to be a superhero. You wanted to have the coolest powers. You wanted to be the best. Well, what if I told you there were real superheroes all around you? These superheroes were to help, just like the ones in the movies. And you didn't have to shine a light or find their secret identity to find them. If you wanted to find them, all you had to do was just raise your hand. The superheroes I'm talking about, the real superheroes in life, are teachers. And without teachers, who's going to save the day? Could it be you?
Okay, so just another quick thank you for all that you do as paras. And then I think we're ready to get into our first topic of trauma. And I think I have Sonia around. Sonia, are you able to share your screen or do I need to stop first? Do you know?
I'm going to certainly try.
Okay. There we go.
Oops, don't want to do that. All right, do you guys see my screen? It says one at a time. Awesome. Well, hello everybody. When Steph asked me to do this, I was so excited because whenever I have an opportunity or a chance to talk with the paras, I'm so excited because you guys are the encyclopedias of school. You guys know what is going on all the time. You have those one-to-one interactions with kiddos, and so I'm really excited to be here today. So like Steph said, my name is Sonia Suckup. I am a licensed mental health practitioner. My journey started in private practice. I didn't want to work with kids, but by happenstance, my supervisor at the time, she worked with kids, and I fell in love with it. It was kind of a perfect fit for me. So I started off in private practice. I did a couple of pyramid model projects across the state with NDE and NCAP, which pyramid model is kind of like the making sure that we're supporting high fidelity classrooms for preschool. And then, I don't know, I was just kind of missing something for my professional repertoire. So I worked for a year in alcohol and addiction, working with adults, which was widely helpful for me because when you work with kids, that stuff comes in more than you might think. And then while I was working there, a practitioner in town heard that I'd worked with kids, and she asked me to come on with her. So I went back to private practice. And a friend actually reached out and told me about this position with ESU. And I jumped on it right away because feeling so passionate about helping kiddos in school and supporting teachers. Because in private practice, when I would reach out to teachers and school staff, everyone was all about what can I do to help. So I'm very, very excited to be at ESU. I'm coming up on 1 year being with ESU. Last year was wildly successful for the LMHPs, and we are so excited to have another LMHP on board this year. Her name is Jenny Bender. Her first day is tomorrow, so you guys might be seeing her out and about. And then I also have a partner, my PIC, Sean Schultz. Sean, are you on? If you want to say hey, go ahead and introduce yourself, Sean.
Yeah, I'm Sean Schultz. I'm the other therapist with the ESU. I serve just at Norfolk Senior High 5 days a week, seeing high schoolers, which I never in my life really thought I'd like to work with teenagers and hadn't a lot before, but I think it's awesome now. Sonia and I talk a lot, and I just, they're at a stage where they can do a lot of learning, take a lot in, and make some changes. And at the same time, there's a lot going on there. So I get a ton of variety as far as what we're working on and just what's going on in their lives. So yeah, and before that, it's a small world. Sonia and I both worked for the same company. I was living in Hastings and she was in Kearney, but it was the same agency that we worked for. I worked there for a long time. That's the one that she worked for a year. Well, a long time. I worked there for 7 years prior to that, and then came this way to have a change, and I'm excited. I'm glad I did. And yeah, last year was awesome. Sonia and I were really excited about getting the position off the ground, and we were really excited we were able to even expand this year. So, that reminds me to mute my phone. Sorry. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. All right. So just a couple of housekeeping things. If you guys have questions, please, please, please ask them. I'm going to hopefully save enough time at the end for a question answer portion, but go ahead and type those questions in the chat, and I'll ask Steph, Tammy, and Sean to help me kind of moderate those just so that you can get your questions answered. I feel like the best time for learning is when you do have those questions. I know that's the way I learn best, is I have to think about it in my head and say it out loud and then have somebody put it together for me. So please, 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 I welcome questions.
And just something to jump in here is Sonia offered a great training for us over Zoom in December for our December Zoom meeting. And we heard such great responses to that training that we decided to bring her back this summer for a longer bit of time. And so we're so excited to have her elaborate for us. So thanks for your feedback.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. So if there aren't any questions right now, I'm going to go ahead and get started because I've got a lot of stuff to talk to you guys about. So one at a time is the title of my presentation, and I'm a little intentional about that. I want the title to mean to you whatever you need it to mean, whether that's 1 second at a time, 1 breath at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. Hopefully throughout this presentation, you will come to understand that meeting needs in ourselves and others is really critical to help people grow and move forward. And so I anticipate being very stressed at the beginning of this year. I don't know about you all, but so my mantra is going to be just 1 day at a time. And I think when we can put things into perspective, it allows our brain to only kind of focus on this moment in time and not get so overwhelmed with everything that's coming at us. So 1 at a time, take that for what you need it to mean. But also thinking about the students that we're going to be supporting in the fall. We live in such a wild time right now. I jotted down just a few things that's going on right now. But so we're living through a worldwide pandemic right now, which is, okay, we're living through a pandemic. There's been a lot of riots and really a confusing time for kids in understanding all of that. There's been death, normal death, complicated death with maybe getting sick, family members passing, possible abuse and neglect, and just loss from last year, not having kind of a clear ending. Those are just a few things to consider when we're talking about supporting students in the fall. So a lot of the stuff in the presentation today will apply to students who've experienced any type of trauma. But the language that I use is really centered around students this fall, because I have a sense that that's what you guys want to know. What can we anticipate and how can we best support students returning in the fall? So if there's a generalized trauma question that I don't touch on, please reach out, let me know, type it in the chat. So keep in mind that each and every child across America, across the world, is going to respond and have a different type of reaction to the events of today. Some will be just fine. Some kids will come back and they will be just fine. They can go with the flow, they'll fit right in, and other kids won't. And those other kids will definitely need our support. So we can't treat all of these children the same in their healing process. However, every child can find benefit to the interventions and processes that I'm going to be talking to you about today. We also have to remember that trauma is trauma, regardless of the event or the experience that is going on. Trauma is experienced in a somewhat similar way in the brain, regardless of what the event or thing is. So keeping that in mind, the interventions and strategies I'm going to be talking about today can be useful for any child person who has experienced trauma. All right. So if you've ever heard me talk before, I always like to talk about Bruce Perry. He's a neuropsychiatrist that really helped us understand that trauma impacts brain development. And he also helped us really understand what are the key things that we can do as people to help repair that in the brain, which I think is wild. I think it's wild that just human interaction can help repair brains. But Bruce says, healing comes through repeated interactions with a compassionate, regulated other. So I'm going to break that down a minute. So compassionate, we all get that. Regulated, meaning calm, cool, collected, aware of what we're thinking and feeling. Other, meaning person, being, not just a grown-up, but other. So let that sink in. Healing comes through repeated interactions with a compassionate, regulated other. A theme you will see in the process of healing is repeated, repeated, repeated. Repetition is what really helps this process in healing. We'll talk about other strategies that offer repetition too, but when students are looking around the room, they're looking for a regulated, compassionate person to support them. Bruce Perry also, in one of his other million wonderful trainings, had this slide and it so resonated with me. It actually it went to my core of my brain and my heart. But he said, programs don't make people better. People make people better. Like, what? That's so true. And I think we can all reflect or think about a really hard time in our lives and think of a person or a other that really helped us get through, really helped us grow and get better. Also, I want this to sink in. I can't remember where this came from, so if you know, let me know so I can give them credit for this. But people won't remember the insignificant details about us, the things we think are big things. The car we drive, the home we live in, the clothes we wear. They will remember how we make them feel. Again, I find this to be so true. I will remember the details of how you connected with my heart. I won't remember the insignificant details. Now, for short term, we will, right? We'll always be talking about, that car and the house and whatever. But as time goes on, we're reflecting on how people made us feel. And it's either good or not good. So this point is exactly why sharing your calm, your smile, your wisdom matters. Because again, when kids are looking around the room, they're looking for that compassionate, regulated other. All right. Any questions in the chat so far? Nope. Okay, moving on. All right, so we can't talk about trauma without talking about you all. Trauma is sometimes big and it's sometimes scary and it's intimidating. And if we are going to reach out and support these people, we have to make sure that we're okay first. So I'm going to talk about the airplane mask analogy first. So if you've ever flown, you know that the flight attendant gets up front and says, if your air mask drops in front of you, you put it on yourself before you help others. The purpose for that being, if you don't have oxygen to your brain, you're going to pass out and you can't help anyone else, right? So we must be taken care of. We have to breathe our full breaths in order to help those that need our help. I encourage you to take this seriously and be tenacious about making sure that your own heart is okay. It's really hard to give what you don't have to give. So do what it takes to get support when you need it, and really be aware of the people, places, and things that you need that would be considered your air mask. What are those things that you need, the people, places, things that you need in order to breathe your full breaths, to be very present and very, very able to help these people who are needing us so much. So secondly, there's a lot of fear involved. And I wouldn't say even just working with kids who've experienced trauma, but working with kids, period. I am not a mother, but I have a niece and a nephew, and I interact with them a lot. And I will just find myself coming upon situations and just kind of feel afraid because I love them so much, you know? So this job that you do, I'm aware that it comes with having fear, and that's okay. It's a very normal thing to happen. So when supporting children, and specifically supporting children with trauma, you will experience feelings of fear. And those might be fear of doing the wrong thing, fear that you won't be able to help them, fear that they will fall through the cracks. I want you to just acknowledge the fear. Notice it in yourself. Running away from it or avoiding it or pretending it's not there makes it 10 times harder, because you're trying to help and support while working through this really big thing inside yourself. So notice the fear. Yeah.
There was just a question. Someone said, beware of compassion fatigue, and someone wanted that. So maybe just kind of elaborate a little bit what compassion fatigue could be.
Sure. So compassion fatigue is when we give and we give and we give of ourselves in a very compassionate way. Oftentimes helpers really experience this in a big way. But when you give and you give and you give of yourself, and you're not refueling or taking a moment to reflect or taking time off even, your brain and your body gets exhausted. Because I want you to kind of have this mental picture that helpers, they have a pie, whatever flavor of pie you like, that can be your pie. And every time you have this really emotionally charged, intense, helpful interaction, you've taken a piece of pie away. And that pie is only going to last for so long, right? Because working with intense situations, and not even intense situations, but situations that require you to offer empathy and compassion and understanding, those times can be really emotionally and mentally exhausting. There goes another piece of pie. On top of the normal human being things that you have to do, those things take pieces of pie too. So compassion fatigue is when you've helped and helped and helped and helped, and there's just not enough pie coming back in the pie plate, and you get burned out In my profession, it happens a lot. And I would say in education, it happens a lot because you guys are 100% helpers in the biggest way possible. Did that answer the question? I hope so. If there's more questions about that, please let me know. I'll share my email at the end, and we can have an ongoing conversation about that if people want resources or anything like that. So again, the fear, just acknowledge it. And then finally, you have to recognize this, and this is a skill that I had to learn because I did not have this at the beginning of my career, but you're not alone, and you don't have to know all the answers. I still find myself in that double-edged sword of like, well, you're the professional, you have to know the answers. Well, kids are complicated, situations are complicated. And so a very wise person, my old supervisor told me, you should never be alone in a difficult situation because that's just robbing you of all your pie pieces. So I encourage you, I implore you to find your team. Find your team, your supports. Cut people from the team if you have to. As backwards as that sounds, sometimes people on your team are robbing pieces of your pie and you don't even know it. Recruit people to your team. Keep it as big or as small as you need. But I think we can agree that in this training right now, none of you are alone. Hear me out. None of you are alone in your longing to help these children. And you're not alone in coming up with the solutions, the interventions, and the emotional energy that will be required to do these things successfully. If you feel alone, tell someone, whether that be a trusted colleague, a good support system in your own life. The first step is just getting it out there. I feel so alone in this. And then take active steps to find your system, find your team, find your supports. And it's always okay to ask the question, I don't know what to do. I need help. It's okay. It's okay. So lastly, this kind of goes back to taking care of yourself and making sure that we don't reach compassion fatigue. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Let that sink in. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So this graphic right here, let's see here. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to drop this PDF into the chat so that you all can have access to this if you want it. But this graphic was originally developed for parents, teachers, educators, grown-ups who work with or have children. And the idea is creating some type of visual to help us understand how to be emotionally aware of children's needs. How do we help them feel emotionally okay? All right. So we look down what fills a child's cup: play, one-on-one time, love and affection. There are things that empty cups: stress, rejection, loneliness. Okay. We have emotional cups too as grown-ups. Our emotional cups may be a little bit more complicated, but we absolutely have emotional cups. And we need to take a moment to pause and think about how full our cups are. So if you can get in the practice of doing this, this is a really great way to offer some self-reflection and prevent compassion fatigue or burnout. How full is my cup? How empty is my cup? What do I need to do to fill my cup? What are the things that empty my cup? This is a really solid practice in self-reflection. So I encourage you all to take time every day to notice how full your cup is. And then you have to make a conscious decision. What are you going to do to fill your cup? If we just rely on others to fill our cups, I don't know that they would ever really get to where we need them. we have to really take charge of our cups so that we can be aware of the cups of the children around us. So I want you all, like, my challenge to you is, after today, sit down and just write down a few things that you know would be cup fillers for you. And if you want help brainstorming what those could be, send me an email. I'd be more than happy to help. So I'm going to share a couple of my cup fillers with you. So my cup fillers are spending time with my niece and my nephew, watching funny movies, getting my to-do list done. So that's kind of a tricky one because it takes things from my cup. Oh, but when I get that to-do list done, it's like power boost. It's like, whoop, it feels so good for me. Exercising, I definitely don't do it enough, but when I do exercise, man, I feel good. Getting a good cup of coffee. Like, maybe for me, it's the ones that cost like $5. It's ridiculous to me, but it tastes so good. Just fills my cup. And then lastly, getting letters or packages in the mail. Again, that could be a double-edged sword, because if I'm buying things, that could cause some anxiety later on. But when I get mail from my grandma, it's just the best. It's like, oh, my cup runneth over. So really honestly taking time to, what are the things that fill your cup, and knowing what are things that rob you of your cup. Mine is a really, really big one for me is not getting enough sleep. And it's taken me years to accept that. I think I was in a state of denial for a very long time. But it just kind of like clicked one day, like, man, when I get good sleep, I wake up with a full cup. And it completely changes things. So again, this is a very reflective process. You got to get in your own mind and think and experiment and try things. And maybe even talk to a buddy about it. Do it together. You get some good ideas from other people who are doing it too, you know? So like I said, I'll drop this in the chat at the very end. That way you guys have this graphic if you need it, want to share it. Any questions about this? Okay, we're going to keep going. All right. So we've talked about you and the importance of you and taking care of yourself, because we got to take care of ourselves in order to be able to be very available for these students that really need us in a big way. So now we're going to talk a little bit about trauma. Whoa, sorry guys. My Siri must be turned on. Yeah, let me just do it again. Okay, so we're going to talk about trauma in two ways here. Keep in mind that one trauma and a million traumas are going to cause very, very different things to happen in a person. Also recognize that every person is different in how they experience and respond to trauma. So for example, something can happen to two different people and they both can have wildly different reactions and responses to what occurred, okay? So in the simplest way of talking about trauma, it can change a fine, okay person into a deeply not okay person in every aspect of their life, okay? And in a really complex way of thinking about trauma, it impacts neurological, meaning brain development, the way our brain functions, developmental, the way we grow, learning, what we take in and how we process information, relationships, whether that be important relationships, family, significant others, work, and trajectory into the world. Where am I headed from here? Okay. So it's hard because there's just so much to know about trauma, but I learned it best by keeping it simple. So I don't want to complicate this. So I'm going to talk to you about two stories. One is an individual that experienced one trauma, and the next story is one that experienced a lot. So the first story you may all know, but it's The Lion King. So Simba's big trauma was he witnessed his father's death, and Simba's uncle convinced him that it was his fault. It was one event, but had a huge impact on Simba's life. He ran away from home. He was disconnected from family. He was in a really, really tough place until he met two supports, Timon and Pumbaa. Probably my all-time favorite Disney characters. Timon and Pumbaa had no idea how to help this little cub with this really big thing that happened in its life, but they were committed to being there for Simba. They held him while Simba was trying to process and figure out what the next piece of life was for him. And then you have another support that comes in, some really great wisdom, Rafiki, trying to help Simba understand that he can move on. And then throughout the story, we keep seeing these supports come in. And if you haven't seen The Lion King, I'm gonna spoil it. Simba goes back and he becomes leader of the land. He becomes healed in what he saw and what he thought happened. He, of course, learned the truth, but that was a big part of his healing. So that was one trauma. And this took him a long time. Like there's a little montage of him growing up. This took a long time. The other story that I'm going to tell you is a very difficult story. And this is of the Joker from Batman Robin. Just last year, they released a movie about the Joker's life. So we get a little inside peek at what the Joker's real life was like. And the Joker experienced trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. No solid foundation for relationships. The people that were in his life hurt him. And we all know the trajectory for the Joker. He grew up to be a really, really bad guy. But the story is very sad. The cards were stacked against him from the beginning. He didn't have anybody there to help him, help teach him how to get over these traumas that occurred over and over and over again. And into his adult life, he continued to experience traumas because that's all he knew. That's all he ever had a reference for. So using those two examples to think about the children that we support, trauma is trauma is trauma. It took years for Simba to be able to be okay with this one thing. And the Joker, a lot of those traumas that started early on in his life really impacted the trajectory into the world. And if we broke it down into, the simple and complex, like the Joker, his neurological development was clearly impacted. But that would be a fascinating discussion all in itself. So any questions about that and just thinking about, one trauma versus repeated traumas and how everybody's going to respond differently to those things? No questions? Okay. We're going to keep moving on then. So we also can't talk about trauma without talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay? So I want you to take a moment to just look through this chart, or this triangle, I guess, and think about your own needs on this triangle. And then I want you to think about, just for yourself, where do you start to learn in this triangle working your way up? Where is it that you can probably start to learn? So I want to give you a hint here for students that we're supporting. Students are less likely to perform at their full potential if their basic needs are not met. Again, the purpose of school is for students to come and learn and move forward and grow. okay? But if these basic needs aren't being met, what can we expect from children? So for me personally, I feel that I can probably take in information between love and belonging and esteem, but esteem really helps in that process of learning. It really helps. It helps me be really present in those learning regions of the brain. I worked several cases last year where it was truly a Maslow's hierarchy of needs issue. Students learn best when they get what they need. Whether it's a hot shower, food, being told that they have a place in school, they have a desk of their own, they have their own locker, they're a part of a group, they make their first friend. All of these things are needed prior to learning. So if you're working with a student and they're really struggling, I'd encourage you to always go to Maslow first. Are we checking the boxes here? Do we have food? Do we have water? We got clothing? Do we have clean clothes? Do we feel safe? Do we feel a sense of connection? What does that look like for kids?
Sonia.
So here is the next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just thinking about how much that changed for a lot of our students last spring when they weren't at school anymore. You know, and we're trying to do things at home, but you know, it was just such a different story for them.
Yep. And we're going to see this with kids returning to school in the fall, because again, some students will be okay, but some students will be off the charts with their needs being met. So here's where the big debate comes in, okay? I've had people tell me before that school is not the place where kids need to get clean clothes and where kids need to take a bath and where kids need to be loved. School is a place where kids come to learn. And I would argue that until kids have those things, they can't learn. And so the purpose of school is moot point. How can we expect kids to learn if they're not getting their basic needs met? And when we're talking about love and connection, those are basic needs. Kids need to know three things. Actually, all humans need to know three things. I've been picked, I've been chosen, and I am loved. And if kids can answer those three questions, they'll be okay. So again, working your way up, these things are basic needs. So when we return in the fall, and we will see children that need clean clothes, we will see children that need haircuts, we will see children that have lost a huge sense of connection with their school community. Those have to be our first priorities. Kids cannot learn until these things are met. And who do the teachers go to most frequently when things are going awry? You guys. Several different instances last year, I was problem solving with paras about how to support students, and it came down to basic needs. It came down to coming to school early to have a warm shower. It came down to a teacher, bless her heart, taking a kid to get a haircut. Happiest kid ever after that, you know? So there is this fine line in education about what you can do and what you can't do. But I would say if we really want to be proud about the fact that we know kids need their basic needs met before they can learn, that we honor this and we offer kids what we can in terms of basic needs. Any questions about that? All right. So, can't talk about trauma without brain development. I could talk about this all day. I am so intrigued and fascinated by brain development and how trauma impacts that. So I'm going to give you all a crash course here on brain development and trauma. So first of all, the brain functions and develops from the bottom up, okay? The brain is like a muscle where you use it again and again and again, and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, okay? So the very first thing to develop is something we call the primitive brain or the brain stem, but it's mostly responsible for sensory motor input, so like taking in our environment, and survival, okay? Taking in our environment and survival, first thing to develop. Makes sense, because we want to stay alive. That's the far most important thing. Moving up in the brain, second thing to develop is the limbic brain, which is responsible for attachment, which is that huge piece of I am picked, I am chosen, I am loved, needing to know those three things. And emotional development, meaning I'm aware of my feelings, I know what my feelings are, I know what to do with my feelings. When kids are having meltdowns or having a really hard time with their feelings, they're in this part of their brain. There's an area of the brain called the amygdala, which is responsible for emotions and keeping us safe. Whenever anything is threatened emotionally or safety-wise, that part of the brain goes wild. And then if we can't keep it together and calm down, we move back down to that lower part of the brain, which is survival. Okay. So then after the limbic brain, we move up to the cortical brain. And this is the most crucial part of the brain for students in school because this is where they learn. Kids have to be in their cortical brain in order to learn and retain information. Okay. So now let's talk about how this works with trauma. When children experience trauma, one trauma is going to be different than multiple traumas. But let's say a student experiences multiple traumas, okay? We can anticipate and expect that the survival portion of the brain is very active and very strong, and that limbic brain with the emotions is going to be very active, okay? So when we go to school and we haven't had any type of developmental repair with the survival part of our brain and the limbic part of our brain working all the time so strong, it's going to be very hard for that child to be in the cortical region of their brain. Because again, the brain works bottom up. What gets used a lot works the hardest. So in talking about how do we help these kids get better, repeated interactions with compassionate, regulated others. It's wild to me that interactions over and over and over with people who get it, who can care, who can be there, who can be present, is the first step in repairing the brain. What? I just think that's wild, you guys. So your next question is going to be, okay, that's great, Sonia, but what do we do? You got to give us some tips here because we're not brain scientists here. It's all right, I got your back. So this right here is broke down into the areas of the brain. Okay, there's an extra one on here, the diencephalon, but that's kind of a part of the brainstem. It's the sensory input. From bottom up, these are interventions, strategies that you can use with children to help them get back to their cortical regions. So a big thing that may come up this fall is safety, survival. Again, that is in the brainstem. Survival equals safety. Somehow we have to communicate with students how they're safe at school. Let that sink in. We have to communicate with kids how they're safe at school. Because we're living through a global pandemic. I'm sure you all are wondering for yourselves, how am I going to stay safe at school? So we have to think ahead about strategies and ways that we can communicate safety. The next tip about the brainstem is I carry around with me when I work with kids a pulse oximeter, which measures your heart rate and oxygen in your blood. My key is if I put that on a student and they're above, I think it's like 115 beats per minute, they're out of their cortical region. They're well on their way down to the brainstem and they're not learning. So it's my job to make sure, okay, we're going to work from the bottom up, establish safety. We're going to regain control of the heart rate. We do that by taking deep breaths. If there is like the best coping skill I could ever teach anybody, it is how to take a good deep breath. Because if we can start regulating the way we breathe, it engages our parasympathetic nervous system, which communicates to the brain, okay, we can calm down. It's okay. And then we see the heart rate lowering. And when we get to an okay place, then we can go to the next step, which is either offering calm down strategies, coping skills, tools, all while you gotta be talking about safety with kids. And we do that through language. I'm here with you. We're gonna get through this together. I'm not leaving until you're okay. We're constantly negotiating with kids how we're keeping them safe. And if you don't know what else to say, just say, we're gonna get through this together, because you're not leaving them. I've never ever experienced a parent being like, you know what, peace. Because you guys care too much. So I will drop this in the chat at the end also, so you guys can have this. I created this for a game that if we were in person, I would totally play this with you guys, but it's a game based on Legos, and you got to put the brain together with the Legos. It's super fun. But again, coming back to the idea that the brain works from the bottom up, and we have to have each foundation in place before we can have that higher level learning, which is the blue region. That's where kids need to be when they're in school.
And Sonia, they can see a recording of the Lego game at our website that we'll talk about later.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right.
And there's any question about, can you talk about CPTSD?
I'm not sure.
I don't know either. Maybe somebody can clarify that.
Complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay. So is the question, how do we help with that, or?
I'll see if they put more in the chat.
They just asked, can you talk about CPTSD?
I just had a question about it, because with kids coming back from abusive homes on top of the COVID, there's going to be like complex stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, and how could we help children with that?
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of talking about complex trauma. So trauma is trauma is trauma. And with complex trauma, my opinion is it's always a great idea to, one, get family involved, and two, get outside supports, whether that be a therapist or a physician or getting your team put together, because with complex trauma, complex issues are at bay. And I think it's unfair to say that you guys are responsible for knowing how to help that. I would say whenever possible, get a team together. I would also say that trauma is trauma is trauma. And I always go back to what I know. What I know is that the brain is use dependent, and we got to work from bottom up. We got to establish safety. We got to offer tools. We got to teach kids, and we have to be that calm, regulated other. With complex trauma, learning looks very different, because you may be working with a kiddo who's never in their cortical region. So how do you teach when they're not there? And that's when I would say you got to get a team together who can really help and support the growth and development for that child. Does that answer your question? Okay. But I would definitely say going back to these strategies of establishing safety, work on deep breathing. Again, I'm here to help you. We're going to get through this together. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to move on. All right. So this is from a main man, Bruce Perry again. This is from a book called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. If you guys want to know more about trauma and you love to read, let me know. You can borrow my book. This book is awesome. You will laugh, you will cry, and you will end the book knowing so much about trauma and having so much respect for the scientific community that helped us get here. But in this book, Bruce says neural systems have evolved to be especially sensitive to novelty, meaning new experiences, since new experiences usually signal either danger or opportunity. Let that sink in. They either signal danger or opportunity. So my interpretation of this is it is our jobs to help kids make sense of the world. Okay? That's a big job. So the best way that I feel like I can explain this is I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'll reflect and talk about this. So I'm using the example of the pandemic because I feel like that's heavy on everyone's brains. So the first example is family becomes anxious and overwhelmed about the pandemic, watches the news 24/7, mom talks constantly about fear of getting the virus, and dad won't stop using hand sanitizer. A child asks to go outside to play. Mom and dad respond with, "No, you might get the virus." This child just heard, "The world is an unsafe place and I could die." Which, when we're talking about survival, we're already igniting the survival system in the brain. Second example, family becomes anxious and overwhelmed about the pandemic. Parents discuss what the sickness is, how to prevent it, and new measures that parents will take to keep kids safe. Child asks to go outside to play. Mom and dad respond with, "Yes, just stay in our yard." This child just heard, "The world is scary right now, but my parents are keeping me safe." So again, both sets of parents anxious and overwhelmed about the pandemic. The first set of parents had a really hard time making sense of it themselves, and so it really didn't make sense for their child. The second example, parents did a great job of one, educating their child and helping them make sense of, we're going to do these things to help keep you safe, but we've got you covered.
And Sonia, I think that we're going to talk later about some COVID considerations coming up this fall, but I think that we need to think about the adults at school too, and how our message to kids and the things that we say and the things that we do and the way we react to the reality right now are, you know, just case in point of this, of what you were talking about.
Yep. I have a perfect example of that. This is totally personal, but I used to have to testify in court all of the time. And it's probably the worst thing ever. I hated testifying in court. And I would just get so nervous beforehand. And if you are a nervous person testifying, your credibility goes down. And so I just kept trying and trying and trying. And finally, I asked my boss, I said, "How do you keep it together?" And she's like, "You just do. You hold it together until you get out of the building, and then you do whatever you need to do, whether that's cry or shake or throw up. You hold it together until you get outside the building." and all for the benefit, all for the purpose of supporting my client. And with supporting kids, it's no different. Like I said, we will all have fear going back, but we have to acknowledge it and find ways to manage it appropriately so that kids are not like, whoa, Sonia's freaking out. If she's freaking out, I definitely should be freaking out. You know, our calm is contagious. And we have to do what we have to do to make sure that we are not only taking care of ourselves, but also being diligent about the messages that we're sharing with kids. Because again, we have to help them make sense of the world. And whether that is through language, whether that is through experience, whether that is through a million different ways of conceptualizing this really big thing that's happening. My favorite way of helping kids make sense of things is by social stories in books, because kids align so well with characters. There is a ton of stuff out there, you guys. Social stories about coming back to school and what is the virus and all kinds of stuff. So if you're curious or needing something like that, please reach out and let me know. And I'll be diligent in finding you those resources. Because I want you to think about yourself too. For me personally, when the pandemic first hit, it was unbelievable to me. I couldn't really fathom what was happening in my world. But through time and repeated interactions with colleagues, professionals, my message that I heard was, we're going to get through this together. And that helps me feel calm. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard, but we're going to get through it together. I'm not alone in this. So again, when we're really asking the big question is, how do we help kids get better and move forward? It's repeated interactions with a calm, regulated other, offering those intervention strategies on the pyramid, and helping them make sense of the experiences that they had that were stored in their brains as danger instead of opportunity. Any questions on that?
Does it get harder over time for kids who have experienced a lot of danger situations? I mean, do they come to expect danger every time more than danger or opportunity, or how does that work with the brain?
Yeah. So again, I mentioned that the brain is like a muscle. You use it more, it becomes stronger. If you've experienced trauma after trauma after trauma, your message about the world is it's an unsafe place. And so because the brain has gotten so good at being in survival mode, that's where that child is going to be at most. So in my previous experience of working with very, very traumatized children, you can kind of just sometimes see, even by the pupils of their eyes being so dilated, their little brains have been programmed to be so hyper vigilant about their world because it's an unsafe place, that their amygdala, the thing that's looking for danger, is activated all the time. So there's a lot of things that happen when that amygdala gets activated. Our bodies are fueled by adrenaline and cortisol, and it's a normal thing in the brain that happens. It happens to all of us too when we are frightened, or something big happens. But when that happens over and over and over and over, it's not good for our bodies or our brains. It gets very toxic. So when we start talking about complex trauma, that's that situation where the part of the brain that keeps us in survival mode is really, really strong. Those would be the cases where it's going to be really hard for kids to move up those levels of the brain. But I would also just reiterate that it's very important to get a team together. That way you have, multiple people helping you and supporting you with how do we help this child move forward. And I would always, when possible, include the child's personal doctor, because with trauma, we're dealing with the brain, and with the brain, we're dealing with the body. And we just know through research that repeated trauma really impacts development, and it impacts the way that our body works. So that was probably way more than what your question was, Steph, but Just acknowledging that with repeated trauma, it's definitely going to take more work, more attention, maybe even a bigger team to get that child to where they need to be. All right, now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts. So what can we expect to see in students in the fall? This list could go on forever, but I personally felt like this list was the most comprehensive in what we might be seeing. So regression behaviorally and academically, shorter attention span, moodiness, definitely increased clinginess and kids feeling worried, increased need for attention and reassurance. I want you to just take a mental note right now, cross out attention and replace that with connection. Whenever I hear people say that child's just wanting attention, I cringe because kids don't want attention. They need connection. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Kids don't get better by someone just looking at them. Kids get better by knowing that they are a part of something with someone. So increased need for connection and reassurance, being socially withdrawn, sleep difficulties, and repetitive play in young children. So what can we do for students? So this is a generalized list, and then my next slide is going to talk more specifically about the process, I guess. So the first thing is to support routines, all right? I want you to think about yourself and how you manage your day. So I have, you guys are going to think I'm nuts. I have an electronic calendar, which is connected to my email. I have a phone calendar, which is on my phone and gives me updates, reminders, all of that. And then I also have a paper planner. Why do I do that, you ask? Repetition, repetition, repetition. If I write it down, put it in my calendar, and have it sync to my phone, I'm going to be so likely to remember to do it because I've done it, right? Another reason is when I know what my day is going to look like, I'm cool and I'm calm. I know what to expect. Predictability supports psychological safety. If I know what's happening or what's coming next, there's no reason to be scared or freaked out. I'm already aware. I'm already preparing in my brain what is going to happen next. Granted, every day might look different. And I'm going to say that if every day looks different, it's an opportunity to help kids go with the flow and exercise those executive functioning skills, flexible and adaptive thinking. But we can still offer them an idea, a routine of what the day is going to look like. We need it for ourselves, and so do they. Secondly, nurture the relationships that you have with students. If there is anything that you should really hit hard and heavy going back in the fall, it's relationships. Relationships, relationships. Relationships are the foundation of growth and development. Again, repeated interactions with a compassionate, regulated other. And if we're talking about that area of the brain that gets really wild when we're not okay, the emotional area of the brain, that's also the attachment center. So if I have a solid foundation for somebody that I trust, that's going to be there for me, that's going to help me calm down way faster. It's going to help me be present better. Support skill development when possible. So this goes back to regress skills. We may have to do a lot of catching up, and that's okay because that's what kids will need. So whenever possible, just support development of skills. Allow them to practice too. Give positive descriptive praise. Okay, there's two arenas of praise. There is good job, and there is, you guys, thank you so much for showing up on a Thursday morning and being so present during this presentation. That makes my heart so happy. All right, you're totally gonna brush off the good job. You're like, I've heard a million of those in my life. But when you give it a description, it goes to this place in your brain that tells you wow, that felt good. I'm going to do that again. So when we're asking to see behavior change in children, the more we're feeding them what we are liking seeing in them, man, I love how you're sitting in your chair so nicely. The more often we do that, the more frequently we do that, the more likely they are to do it. Because the brain likes it, likes to hear it. Stick to the rules. Rules and expectations are going to be vitally important. You're going to have to review, 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 review. But the caveat here is, I don't want you to get hung up on the rules so much that you lose the context of relationship. So for example, if a student calls you stupid, your first reaction is to get defensive. Don't get defensive, and offer a consequence right away. Engage in relationship and get curious. So look for understanding, go back to what the teachable moment is, but don't lose it in the context of relationship. Teach and model coping skills. So you are a wildly important teacher in the room because everyone's watching you, and what you do, they learn too. So I encourage this. Share what you're thinking and feeling. Whew, wow, I am feeling a little frustrated here because we were supposed to start 3 minutes ago. So I'm going to take some deep breaths, give myself a minute, and then we're going to try again. By you role modeling and talking out loud about your own feelings, they're learning. They're little sponges, they take it in. And you can also come back to that as a teaching moment. Remember when I was frustrated, I took a deep breath and I felt better. So modeling, wildly helpful. Use positive reinforcement when possible. Again, label emotions. Label emotions. I'm also going to go on a huge step box here and say that all emotions are okay. In everyone, all emotions are okay. I cannot tell you how many times I hear people saying, stop crying, it's not okay to cry. No! All emotions are okay. It's just not okay to hit, to yell, to kick, to be mean, to run away. It's okay to feel how you feel. But stay with me right now while I help you get through this, and we're going to find a better way to do this. I know it's hard. All emotions are okay. Offer reassurance and offer all feelings are okay, like I just said, but reassurance really coming in the sense of we're going to get through this together. Here's what's going to happen next. We are going to get through to the end of the day. Whatever reassurance needs to look like, offer that if you can. Collaborate with other people in the students' lives. So if they've been with grandma all summer, it'd be important to connect with grandma because she knows what's going on. Even just having that little sense of, so grandma told me that you made it to level 100 in your video game. Like, they're like, whoa, what? You know that? It's you going the extra mile and having that short conversation that is going to continue to strengthen that relationship with the student. Nurture connections when possible. Again, not attention, connection. Kids need connection. And lastly, be curious. Be a detective. Put on your detective hat. So example, student says, I'm stupid. Instead of saying, no, you're not, get curious. Ask the question, what makes you say that? Always be listening and avoid just denying what their thought is. And the value in that is, kids will tell you if you're wrong. So if you're really curious, if you're being a detective and make statements like, well, I wonder if this math is just really hard for you right now. They will tell you, like, no, my mom yelled at me this morning. You know, being a detective gets you way farther than just cutting them off and having to go to the next thing. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Any questions about that? Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, intervention time. So when we are working with these little people, I would say regulate, tools, learn. That is the order that we really need to focus. Regulate, tools, learn. Regulate, tools, learn. So regulate, again, is that we're cool, calm, collected. We're aware of what we're feeling, and we have some word to describe how we're feeling. How do we do that, Sonia? By this. First of all, share your calm. You have to be calm going into the situation because kids are going to know when you're not, right? Have you ever experienced where you're just like, la, 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 going along, and then your mom walks in the room and she's got a look on her face and you're like, whoa, don't talk to mom, something's going on, right? She doesn't have to say anything, but you already know I can't engage in that right now because it's not okay. So you have to share your calm. You have to be that person that kids are going to look to and say, I can trust you with whatever's about to happen, right? Get on their level. If they're sitting on the floor, sit on the floor. If they're laying on the floor, lay on the floor. If they're standing, crouch down so you can see their little eyes. When they're here and you're up here, it creates a power differential. And just by biology, that communicates on equal playing field, right? Just think about yourself. There's a difference in talking to your colleagues when they're towering over you versus we're both here. We're on the same playing field here. Rhythm and repetition. So I mentioned earlier, rhythm and repetition are vitally important. If we're looking at helping a child regulate or calm down, it can be very helpful to offer some sense of repetition. So I'm going to explain this. When babies are in utero, all of their senses aren't fully developed except for hearing. They can hear. And so the predictability and safety of hearing their mother's heartbeat lets them know that they're okay. It's repetitive, it's predictable. So when babies are born and they're not okay, what do we naturally do? We pick them up, we hold them close to our heart, we pat them on the back, we bounce them, we rock them. All of those things are repetitive, right? Goes back to that biology of mother's heartbeat, I'm safe. As kids grow older, we can't rock them anymore because one, they won't stay on our laps, and two, they have other things to do. But we find age-appropriate ways to offer repetition and regulation. When they start language development, we start communicating feelings, emotions. We help teaching them tools. Take deep breaths, take time for yourself, go for a walk, drum, listen to music. Anything that offers a sense of rhythm and repetition can really be helpful in slowing things down and calming things down. Walking is also a very repetitious activity. Right, left, right, left. Name and learn the feeling. So this is a Dan Siegel idea. Dan Siegel is also wildly important in helping us understand brain science and trauma. But he calls this name it to tame it. So if you're working with a student and they're really struggling emotionally, and you can say, wow, I can see you're feeling really frustrated right now. Dan Siegel says by just naming the feeling, you've connected something in their brain, and sometimes that can be enough to help start to slow things down. And it helps them connect with you and trust you. So name it to tame it. And then finally, this is the most important part of offering regulation with a child, and it's be with. It's so much more complicated than the words. So I'm going to give you a hint here. If you are a person who has a really hard time with silence, being with is going to be hard for you. Because that's the whole idea of not knowing what's going to come next. And it just feels uncomfortable and you need action. Being with is the opposite of that. Being with is being present with an emotion in a person, and you're not doing a dang thing to shift them out of it. You're not negotiating with them. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. When in fact, you can't say it's going to be okay. You're not saying it'll get better. It'll get better. No, we're just simply being with them in their feeling. It's our job to communicate their feelings. Wow, I can see that you're really struggling right now. Being present, being with them in that. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, because what that requires is you to know what that feeling is, take yourself there, and be present with that person in that feeling. Wow. You didn't get a good grade on this assignment. That's so hard. Just be with. And the thing that is sometimes the hardest is, I don't know what to say. Sometimes you don't have to know. Sometimes you don't say anything. Some of those painful moments in my life were met with somebody just being with me, not offering me advice, not telling me what to do, just simply being with me in a safe way.
Sonia, there's a question.
Mhm.
Kind of goes with the previous slide. Maybe what are some responses you recommend using if a student calls you stupid or other names? The teachers I work with use a planned ignoring method. If we get called names, it normally works well, but allowing them to calm down. However, one student who escalates if he is ignored. So what are some suggestions for that?
So you guys are the experts of the kids that you support. You really are. If there are strategies that work with some kids, do it. For the kiddo that escalates him, don't do that strategy. My guess is that child is looking for connection. I need somebody here with me right now. And maybe that would be an opportunity to get curious with that student. Or maybe you make I wonder statements, which I use all the time with kids. So a kid calls you stupid, and I might say something like, man, I wonder if you're feeling upset right now and need some time to reset. I will help you with that. Because sometimes it's an internal feeling and they're just projecting it onto you. They're feeling stupid, and so they call you stupid. But never take it personal, because if they're brave enough to call you stupid, they know that you're not leaving them, that you're going to help them get through. I always tell this to parents with teenagers too. They're going to say the worst things to you because there's safety in that. They know at the end of the day that you're still going to love them. It's kind of the same with kids saying awful things to you. It's at the end of the day, they know you're still going to support them. And some kids, it's also a test. If I call you stupid and you walk away, that's what I expected. People walk away from me. People can't stay in my life. People, so when possible, stay connected. Be curious. Ask the I wonder. And they'll tell you if you're wrong. I mean, in my mind, I'm always like, okay, I kind of get where the kids are coming from here. But oftentimes it's just they're wanting to engage with you in some way, whether it's verbally or they want you to be there with them. And so I think that'd be a great conversation for the team that you have of how do we stay connected with this child and at the same time set boundaries with, it's okay for you to get frustrated with us, but you can't say this. Next time, call us, you're bananas or whatever. And that's the cue to say, I need you with me right now, or I'm frustrated right now, or kind of have to think outside of the box sometimes. But I would say if strategies work for some kids and not others, use the strategies that work for the kids. And if not, go back to the drawing board, because all kids are different. I hope that answered that question.
It's a thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So we've got some regulation here. We're on their level. We're present. We're not talking them out of their feelings. And we are calm. We've established their feeling. The next thing that we have to do, and hopefully by then they're slowing down and they're not as intense. The next thing that we have to do is we have to offer some type of tool. So the kicker here is all tools should be taught ahead of time, okay? It's really hard to put your seatbelt on in the middle of a crash. Doesn't work. We need tools to be taught beforehand over and over and over and over, okay? I get upset when I go out for a walk and come back and haven't lost 10 pounds. Well, it's because I have to walk again and again and again and again. Everything that is worth good takes time and repetition. So we have to teach calm down tools. You have to practice daily when everybody's in a good spot. That's vitally important because where does learning take place? Cortical region of the brain. When we're not okay, we're definitely not there. So if we practice these skills when we are in a good spot and we're regulated, when we aren't okay, we're way more likely to be able to come back and access them. And then let them decide what they like. Kids are so used to being told what to do. When it comes to their own ways of developing and growing in terms of their emotional intelligence, give them some flexibility and freedom with this. I think it's kind of fun. Let kids pick and choose what they like best and what works best for them. And then practice, go with it. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Okay? So we've regulated, we've accessed some tools, and now what we have to do is we have to learn from that experience. So the teachable moment or the learning moment here is reflecting with them. So how can we do it different next time? What didn't work? How can we do it different next time? And during this piece, be as empathetic as possible. We've all been there. Regardless of the situation, we all have some experience or some feeling that we can offer that we've been there before. Give them some grace. They're little people and they're learning. And whenever possible, communicate. We will get through this together. That's a very powerful phrase. I'm here with you. We will get through this together. Communicates connection, right? So also know that while we're learning, we might get it wrong 100 times and then get it right the 101st time. Learning takes practice and repetition. So do not get frustrated if you've practiced a million times and we're still not getting it. It just takes practice over and over and over again. Just like learning any new skill, it takes practice. I also want to note here that empathy is different than sympathy. Empathy requires you to put yourself in the child's shoes, okay? Wow, I know how it feels to be disappointed. This frame of mind promotes connection instead of disconnection. So when possible, be empathetic. Empathy is hard because you have to be vulnerable. Again, that goes back to being with. You gotta put yourself there. You gotta put yourself out there to be very present with this person that's struggling. All right, any questions on that? So this is my email address. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I love hearing from you guys. I don't know, I think that's a connection thing for me too, is I love hearing from you guys. If you have questions, if you want resources, if I've said something today that you have more questions about or you want resources on, please, please, please reach out. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to go to, how many minutes do we have left, Steph?
About 10.
Awesome. Okay. I want to open it up to questions. or if anybody has anything that they would like to say or feedback, I'm totally open to that. Again, I feel like questions is the best time for learning, because it's like, yes, okay. If there's any gaps in my presentation, I want to make sure everybody has good understanding. Anything?
Be bold. Don't be afraid to ask the question to the group, right? We all have a
Yeah.
student maybe that we can think back to that maybe was described here. And maybe you have a question about the way that a situation was handled, or what you could have said or done differently.
So while we wait for questions, I am dropping in the chat the files, the emotional cup one and the Lego pyramid thing. I also sent them to Steph in case you guys need that for future reference.
And then they'll have access to the slideshow on our website.
Awesome.
So we'll show them where that is too.
Awesome. More ideas for children that need their cups continually filled. So I would say that in this instance, it's okay to have things prepared ahead of time. If you have that kiddo who is just robbing your own cup because they need their cups filled so frequently, it's okay to have things ahead of time. So going through the hundreds of kids that I've worked with a kiddo in a preschool, and was very much this kiddo that needed their cup constantly filled. We did some intentional planning, and this kiddo, the minute that this kid walked in the door, had a connective activity, read a social story with another adult in the room. And it was like bang for your buck, because not only were we doing a connective activity, the social story was on some type of skill. So whether that was making friends or an emotional literacy story, we were kind of doubling up on that connective time. That little kiddo was the helper then, was kind of always holding someone's hand, whether that was an adult in the room or a peer. Tons and tons of positive descriptive praise. Anytime you can give a child positive descriptive praise, that's a cup filler. Doing things like reminding them that they have a place in the classroom, like all the other kids have special jobs, just pointing out like, who, you're the door helper today. Just little things that can be very planful but very impactful for some of those kiddos. And if it gets so intense, like it kind of goes back to how you decide to manage your classroom. But there is a process for setting boundaries too. It's okay to talk about boundaries. So for instance, constantly needing reassurance. Maybe you cut that down to 3 times a day, and then they have a little social story that they go and they read on their own if they're needing some type of connection. And it's all about learning. So you kind of have to walk them through the process. And it can be labor intensive at the beginning. But the idea is I'm going to be here and help you now so that you can do it on your own later, right? And it's going to require a team, because you need the ideas, you need the support. I hope that kind of answered the question. Hold on. And then balancing independence. Yeah. It's really about kind of meeting those basic needs. Let me help you now so that you can learn how to do it on your own later. Repetition, skill development, with the goal of always backing away, right? I always use the analogy of kids in the bath. When they're little, you have to be there all the time. And then when they get a little older, you're kind of there, but they're not so in a little thing anymore. And then they grow and they're like, get out. So it's kind of like that. You you got to take it kind of one step at a time. But communication with your team is huge on that too, because if you're going to set boundaries with a child and have some expectations, like, okay, we're going to do 3 really highly connective activities at the beginning of the day and taper off towards the end. Everybody's got to be on the same page about that. Otherwise, all it takes is one person to sabotage it, and then you're back at the beginning. I hope that answered that question. Okay, next one. Oh, this is such a good question. Someone who's on the team comes in and makes things worse. Not trying to discourage their help, but letting them know it's not helping. So I think that's a team conversation, and it's all about you don't want to overwhelm kids, right? So I guess for me personally, if I was in this meeting, I would say, for the benefit of this child, I think it's important that when X is happening, there is one person in proximity. And you can even establish boundaries in the room, in the corner. If you kind of know where that person is and the child starts to escalate, you set that boundary. And you say, we're going to give this a try. I think this is in the best interest of the child, and the whole team has to be on the same page. And you write it down. And so say the next time the kid is having an episode and that person comes in, you have to have the tough conversation of saying, remember, we agreed to this plan. We need to stick to it. We need to give it a try. And that's where, like, if you do have a formal plan put together, data should be informing a lot of your decisions. But you can also take it from that perspective of, we need to do it just like this. Otherwise, we won't know if it's working or not if we're not following the plan that we agreed upon. I hope that helps with that question. Adults in the classroom. So the question about adults in classroom, school talking amongst themselves in public forums about the child and or the child's issues. Me personally, I would say that's an ethical question. I would not do that because I'm bound by confidentiality. that would be a big no-no. But I think it would also be a conversation about, it seems like maybe they're looking for answers or trying to get support. And if so, how can we offer that in a way that we're not, obviously you should never talk about a child in front of the child if it's bad. Talk about it in a safe way. So whether we have planned time where we talk about this and talk about supports, or as a team, we get permission before we outsource questions or things of that nature. I think if it's just generalized questions, I don't know that I would have a huge problem with that, but I think it goes back to the team in making decisions about how things are communicated about the child and what information they are sharing. And I would also say that, yes, it does undermine the child's ability, especially if the child is hearing about it or the parents are hearing about it. Because then any type of relationship that has been established is done for. And no longer will that child trust, no longer will the parents trust. Any type of progress that you're looking at could be hugely compromised by that. So again, everything, your foundation is relationship. So if you have a gut feeling that this is something that could rupture that relationship, don't do it. Don't do it unless you are obligated to. And then go back and have a conversation about it. Try to repair whatever that rupture was. I hope that answered that question.
I'm guessing, Sonia, too, that I'm going to go out on a limb and say that as paras, that they might be in a position where they hear other teachers talking about that. So therefore, how does a para go about, because obviously it's the teacher, so where do they bring that concern?
So I think, again, got to take it back to the team, because I think it's fair that everybody hears the same message, whether that is setting up a meeting to talk about this concern, or getting administration involved just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Throw me on the bus if you need to and say that Sonia said it's very harmful to kids if they hear teachers talking about them in a negative way, just so that everyone's on the same page. And
I think
some of these,
Kim is saying here too, sometimes the paras aren't even a member of the team. And I think that's something for us from the ESU standpoint. And when Sonia's right in the school, you know, we can advocate for that. The people who are closest to that kid and work the closest should be on the team. And then Monica's asking, but what about the people who aren't on the team, who are kind of coming in to help with good intentions, but you're kind of saying, no, we got this covered. And maybe that's a chance for the administrator to set out some parameters for the way the teamwork works.
Yep. It's always worth a conversation of having boundaries. Who is responsible for what? Who is going to be involved? And whenever I would get involved with an FBA with a child or a family, my position is anyone that works with this child throughout the day, I want them at the table. Even the bus driver, if they can be there, because every interaction matters, and people have information that could be vastly valuable. My example of this is I was working in a preschool, and this kiddo was just struggling so much. So finally, everybody, all the players got together at the table because these parents were thinking about pulling this kid. And the dad, they were using the strategy of stop. They were putting their hand up, and the dad was offended by that. He said, like, culturally, that's not okay. And the teacher was like, what? I didn't even know. Like, I'm so sorry. So some of these things can be uncomfortable, but those are key players. Everybody needs to come to the table, because, I mean, whenever I'm asking about triggers, things at work, I'm generally going to paras because they're working with them the most. They know what sets them off, and they should be at the table. And so some of these things are really big topics, like cultural shifts within the way that your school operates. But I think it's okay to advocate for that. If you know that you're working with a child and you need to be on that team, talk to the IEP manager, whoever that is, and say, I think it's really important that I be included in this team because I'm missing a lot of pieces. I need to know what the plan is and how I can be responsible for that. But then on the flip side, how I can also give information to support the team better. Does that answer that? I hope so. And yeah, paras, you guys, I cannot believe how many times I will get an IEP and be like, so who knows about this? And it's like, well, whoever is on the listserv. And it's like, man, these paras are doing a good job if they don't even know what the plan is. That is really frustrating when you guys aren't even informed of what the plan is. So advocate for yourselves. Go to whoever it is and say, I need to know what the plan is. And I wouldn't think that anyone would disagree with you. But if they do, take it to whoever your support is. whoever is your person in your school. If you need support in kind of confronting that head on, get the support that you need to do it. All right, any other questions?
Well, I think we all want to thank you so much, Sonia, for joining us today, and Sean. And thank you for the work that you do for kids in our schools and being a resource all through the year. So
absolutely. Thank you guys
for the
so
ladies.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Like I said, please email me with questions that you have. I love hearing from you all. And I'll be seeing some of you very soon. So everybody be well.
Thanks. Okay, guys, we're up to our break time. My clock says, well, it says 10:49, but we're going to consider it says 10:50 and come back at 10:55. So whatever your clock says, add up 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and we'll be back. Okay, so we are back, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And I'm going to have to advance a ways there. So hopefully you learned some new tips and tricks to use with kids and really helping them through the tough times. Here's just a little fact for you. There are about 2.1 million K-12 para-educators in the U.S. So you are a part of a big army of helpers in our schools. So we need it. And we're so happy you're a part of it and part of our day today. And here, if you ask some kids about their teachers being superheroes, here are the answers. So let's watch this little bit.
Hey guys, what would you think if I told you that your teachers were secretly superheroes?
No.
No?
They're not.
Definitely not?
Nope.
Like not even a little bit believable?
Nope.
I believe him.
You believe me?
No.
I like you. I'm going to ask you some questions. These are very difficult questions. Okay, these are the questions you have been preparing for all year long.
Said these are going to be easy as pie.
Who's your teacher?
Miss Newberg.
You'll write that down. Do you know what teachers do in their spare time?
Go to a meeting?
Yes, they do. All the time. If you could have your teachers have any superpower, what would it be?
Freeze people that are being bad, and then when they're good, and then when they say they're gonna be, and then when she frees them, and they say that they're gonna be good, she'll never freeze them again.
That's reasonable.
I would do it in the bathroom.
Hey, let's talk about something else. Yes, ma'am.
I got a funny question. Do your mustache make you itch a lot?
All the time. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Raise our hand.
Who's your favorite soup? Well, wait until I ask the question. Otherwise, it's going to look like we did it in advance. Oh, and ignore everybody else. Just focus on me. Yeah. That's right. High five. Somebody finally gets me. Do you think Aquaman gets paid?
No.
No? If he did, how much would he make?
$1 billion.
$1 billion? How much do you think Miss Pricey gets paid?
9 billion.
9 billion? More than Aquaman?
That's really not true.
It's not true? Oh. That's a shame. Yes?
I think my mom's a spy
For which country?
from Alabama.
Emma, who's your favorite superhero?
Superman.
Superman? Why do you like Superman?
Because I love my brother and he loves Superman.
Oh, that's adorable. What would your superhero name be?
Ice Girl?
Ice Girl. And what would Ice Girl do?
Stop fires.
Okay. I thought we were going in a different direction with that.
So you wonder what kids would say are your superpowers, right? And we're going to talk more about that. So what is your superpower and your kryptonite?
Hey, I was going to say, Rebecca, can you hear us, or was it just the video? If you'd let us know in the chat, we'll kind of keep going. So yeah, when you think about that superhero wearing a cape, you know, that cape kind of signifies that they can fly through anything, and it's kind of a protection. So we're going to have we asked you if you would get a piece of paper, and it could just be, you know, a scratch piece of paper on the back, or if you have a piece of typing paper or copy paper or something, because we'd like you to keep this in your classroom all year, just to remind you. And so we're going to go through a couple. Steph and I each did one. So we're going to want you to think of 3 superpowers, 3 things that you're strong at or come easy for you. And then we'll have to think of one, the kryptonite, that maybe is a weakness or maybe something that cripples you. And so maybe we can kind of focus on doing a better job of moving that to a strength. So we'll take a look at one. I think Steph did hers first. So if you want to switch.
Sorry. Oh, we got Tammy's first.
Okay, yep. All right. So I put, I just started at the bottom doing it. I put listening as a strength that I have. And I don't know if I've always had this or what. I was a school counselor before too. And so I had a really good listening ear, and I can really listen to all my friends without always offering my 2 cents worth. So I'm a good listener. I like to problem solve through things. Kind of try to come up with a lot of different ways to solve a problem, and then maybe as a team select the one that works best. I feel like I have a lot of compassion, and sometimes I know one of the paras put in there that can be crippling, and sometimes it can be because I just feel like I want to put myself in kids' positions so often. But the one thing that I find is my weakness, even though I listen real well or I like to problem solve, but sometimes I'm quick to jump in. And not because I think it needs to be my way, but it's part of me as wanting to be a helper and want to help and make the situation better right away. So I look at that as sometimes my kryptonite. I tend to sometimes not let people struggle a little bit on their own, or kids struggle a little bit on their own. I want to try to come and solve that problem, to be the fixer. So that is my weakness.
And for me, my strengths are relationship building. I think, my kids did know that I was there because I cared about them. I told them that every year on the first day of school. I'm here because of you, first and foremost. And also showing enthusiasm. I get a little excited about things. Also, the content area of reading language arts knowledge. So some of our content knowledge can help be one of our superpowers. But one of my kryptonites is that I say yes too much. And then I get overwhelmed, and I feel stressed out because of it. So I have to watch myself on and maybe set a goal towards that of not being on every committee and on every board throughout town and things like that. I can work on that. So now it's your turn.
So we want you to, just like I said, draw on a piece of paper like this cape. You can use the outline, or maybe you're a much better artist. And so draw your cape and write 3 things that are your strength, and then write 1 thing that you would like to work on. That's your kryptonite.
So we're going to give you just a few minutes to get that done, and then we'll discuss them. Okay, who's brave and would like to share out either a superpower or a kryptonite?
Then you can unmute yourself and share that out if you'd like to.
Or even type it in the chat.
Yep.
Kim Raggi is a good listener. That's awesome. And kids need that. And I think that's the power of paras too, is that you can be that quiet ear that's right next to the kid while the teacher juggles the whole classroom. We have encouraging from Deb. Monica says she's patient, an acknowledger, and a listener, and her kryptonite is being a fixer. We have another one who's encouraging and curious as to why. And having a sense of humor makes you a great para. Kryptonite, not always being able to control my facial expressions. I could fall in that category. Amanda is friendly and calm. And if this is the Amanda I know, I totally agree that you are friendly and calm. Deb says that her kryptonite is saying yes way too much. Yep, I agree with you. And then we have calm in crisis, but then what I need to work on is after the crisis melts down. Yeah, sometimes it's hard for us to calm back down, right? All right, thanks you guys for sharing so much. And I think
taking everything to heart. It is. And like I said too, in this position, because you sometimes work with the most struggling kids, hear their stories, know where they come from, so that can be very, or if something hurts your feelings, you're taking that to heart. So
sometimes we carry a lot of that emotional baggage home with us. And I remember I used to hold that stress of kids not getting what they need or whatever, kids going through rough times in my shoulders. And I had tight shoulders the whole time I taught. Someone finds themselves jumping in too fast. Yeah, we just know what needs to be done for them. And come on, let's quick solve this problem and get going, right? I think that's our job.
Not filling their own cup up.
Mm-hmm.
That is, because we think we're kind of sometimes invincible, and we forget that there's only so much that we can do too before we need to be refueled.
But as this slide is showing, teamwork is the big key here, right, Tammy?
Absolutely. Relying on each other and asking for help and knowing who to go to.
Well, and if we looked at each one of these superheroes, they all bring a different strength and a different superpower to the team. And where the strength of the team really lies in is combining those superpowers and helping each other out and having each other's backs. So whether your team is all the paras in your school or your team is the teachers that you work with, or, honestly, teaming up with your kids too and viewing each other as a team. That's what we have to focus on as, acknowledging our superpowers, also acknowledging what's a little bit hard for us, and then overcoming that obstacle or finding a team member who can help you through that part.
And like I think with Sonia, when she said about something's not going right as the team and trying to advocate for yourself. And I know that's easier said than done, but maybe just saying, I'm wondering if we would do, or I'm wondering about, sometimes if you come about rather than just putting a question out there, it kind of takes maybe some of that abrasiveness off a little bit. I'm just wondering to kind of maybe that you started that conversation to maybe get some feedback too. So.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so keep your cape around, refer to it later, kind of keep that goal for yourself as something to work on or a strategy to just improve upon. All right, so now we're going to talk about those superpowers at work. So all those superpowers that you have, how are we going to put them to work in 2020? And I think overall this year, we just have so many different considerations than we've ever had in the teaching profession, right? things are different this year. We're going to have to do things differently. So let's talk about a few of those things. So when we go back to school with COVIDs, what routines and procedures might impact your job? And Paris, I think I can understand a lot of areas that might be a little bit different for you this year. And you're going to be called upon to help in ways that maybe you haven't been called upon before. All right. Does anybody know Gary Brooks? I got to actually see him at a conference last year. He's a lot of fun, and he has some ideas about classroom job assignments for the school year, considering COVID. And this might even be para job assignments. So let's watch him.
All right, eyes on me, boys and girls. I got something very important to tell you, and you're going to love hearing this. So listen very carefully. I'm about to explain the jobs that we're going to have in our classroom this year, and tomorrow you get to pick. So pay very close attention to the jobs. Now, the first 4 jobs happen first thing in the morning before anybody even comes to the classroom. So you got to make sure that you're here on time. So the first job you might be able to be is the door nurse. Now, the door nurse is going to take everybody's temperature before they even walk into classroom. And the door nurse has to work very closely with the room bouncer, because the door nurse tells the room bouncer what the temperatures are, and then the room bouncer, if it's 98.5 or lower, says, welcome, come on in. And if it's a 98.6 or higher, they say, bye, Felicia, you might have to coronas, go to the office. So you might want to be one of these 2 jobs. Now, the next job, right after they get back past the room bouncer, is the taste checker. This person's going to have a little shaker, and everybody's got to stick their tongue out, do this, and they're going to shake something on your tongue, and you got to guess if it's salt or sugar based on your taste. If you get it wrong because you can't taste nothing, boom, you got to go to the office. You might have to coronas, so you might want to be the taste checker this year. You could also be outside in the hallway early, the CVS czar. This person's going to have this checklist, and they're going to ask you, did your mama give you Advil or Motrin or Tylenol this morning to be able to get you to be at school for 4 hours with no temperature? And if you say yes, they're going to check that box and send you to the office, go on home. So you might be able to be the CVS czar too. Now, this one's very important. Once everybody gets in the classroom, this is the cough counter, and they pay very close attention. When someone's coughs, they get out a sheet and they mark a 1, and then they pay attention to that person, and they mark it off every time that person coughs. And when they get to the 4th cough, bye, that person has to send the person to office. So you might be the cough counter this year. Now, here's another one you're going to love. This is the Durstenson detective. That person's going to have 2 yardsticks taped together. You got to walk around and make sure everybody is 6 feet apart. So you might be the Dursten's detective this school year. And here's one that's going to be really fun too. This is the mask enforcer. See, everybody's wearing their masks. Look around except for me as I'm talking. The mask enforcer is going to pay attention to that, and you're going to have little rubber bands. And if someone takes off their mask, you're going to boom, you're going to pop them with a rubber band. Isn't that going to be fun? You might be able to be the mask enforcer this year. Then we got the 20-second Beyonce. This person stands at the sink when we're washing our hands, and they sing a Beyonce song for 20 seconds. All the single ladies, put your hands up. And they sing for 20 seconds, running their finger along here, and that way everybody knows to wash their hands for 20 seconds. You might be the 20-second Beyonce. There's also going to be a plexiglass polisher. You got to clean all these plexiglasses on our desks that are stopping us like the sneeze guards. You could be that job. This is very important. This is the keeper of the map. You're going to have a map of the hot spots, and when we have a visitor, somebody's grandma or somebody reading to the classroom, you got to ask them where they're coming from, and if they're in a hot spot, boom, you say, sorry, can't come in. And then everybody this year is going to be a contact tracer. You're going to have a sheet like this, and you got to write down everybody's name this year that you come in contact with every single day. So we got some great jobs to get us through this school year. You think about what you want and tell me tomorrow.
You need to unmute, Steph. I just think too, with all of this, I mean, in all the seriousness, I think it is important to find some humor, because it just made me chuckle thinking of just now what has been thrown our way and what we're going to be asked to do. So I think it's all just such such a place to navigate. His name is Gary Brooks, GerryBrooks, and he has a lot of really good videos.
You can find
Just
him
his-
on Facebook and YouTube and things. He's
Mhm.
really a good guy.
Hmm.
All right. So, we're going to talk about some of these COVID considerations. And I just want to say, have a disclaimer at the beginning to say each and every one of your schools is going to have a different plan. So for us to just say, it'll be one way, it's just not the truth. So the bottom line is you're going to need to talk to your principal, talk to your teachers, about how things are going to be handled in your building. And I'm sure that's coming as your staff comes together on those first few days, because this is such a big deal this year. And so new to all of us. But one thing is the health departments are using a risk dial to label each county, with their COVID cases and that kind of thing. And many schools have used that dial to inform their decisions and decide on what procedures will take place when you're in a certain color of the dial. Okay, so for instance, mask wearing. If we talk about mask wearing, mask wearing might look different at a green, a yellow, an orange, and a red. Okay, so at green it might be optional. At yellow it might be, all adults have to wear them. At orange, maybe everyone wears a mask, and at red, we're home. And that's just coming up with it on the top of my head. Your school, though, might be using this dial to decide certain things like mask wearing, or like being in public spaces within the school. What does recess look like in each of those areas? What does lunch look like in each of those areas? So it's your job, to find out, hey, what are our procedures with this? So you might also be asking a lot of questions, and I highly encourage you to keep a list of questions with you. And when you have those first meetings with your administrators, ask good questions, right? We all want to protect ourselves and protect the kids we work with and our coworkers. And how does that look like? How is that best done in our schools?
I think this can change from week to week. So just know, again, be aware. But I'm sure, like, I've seen some things on Facebook where schools have been putting out procedures, what they will follow. So just really make sure that you know that. And like I said, too, just don't be afraid to ask those questions.
And here's a graphic with some just different considerations that I think that paras you might fall into. And when we think about the Gary Brooks video, we might see some of that. But washing hands, right? Lots of times paras help monitor bathroom breaks and things like that. And so we might need to really monitor how kids wash their hands and that they wash them long enough. And also using hand sanitizer. So probably your school is going to have lots of hand sanitizer all around. You might need to think about the areas where you as a para work and where you might need some sanitizer, and maybe get a bottle put in that location. Is there a time that you're pulling a student by themselves for something? And do you need to have some there? That kind of thing. Just kind of think proactively to get things put in place where you need it. Beth Ramold, our director of school nursing, has just said, with hand washing and hand sanitizer, we're just amping this up. Of course, those are always good practices for us to follow. We're just amping up the need right now and the awareness of that need. So wearing masks, this is, I can't believe it's become so controversial to wear a mask or not in our country. But some schools are providing masks for workers to wear. Some are asking their employees to provide their own masks. Some schools will provide a mask but ask you to launder your own, and some schools will launder them. Some schools will provide disposable masks. Some schools require employees to wear masks, and some will not. Will just suggest that it is recommended. Again, from our nursing department here, they said that that is one of the best ways to prevent the spread is to wear a mask. So it is recommended, but you need to find out what the procedures are at your school. I've also seen some schools online and some friends who are teachers even in other states who have bought the face shields. And I've kind of even considered it for myself just because of the ease of talking with that. So really, find out your policy and then find out, are kids going to be wearing those? We're going to talk about social distancing in a moment and talk about paras. Oftentimes you're working in very close proximity to students. And so that's really, a time that you might want to think about, how am I shielding my face from them? Is mask wearing mandatory in certain situations, but not others? Like if you are helping to deliver lunches to classrooms, say they're going to eat in their classrooms, or you're helping serve a lunch or monitor lunch, is it required there, but not when you're just having class in the classroom? So there might be some different times of your day that you would want to consider that. Consider what is going to be asked of me in that situation. Okay, social distancing. So we saw in Gary's clip about keeping that 6-foot distance. And I think we can probably expect that desks and things will be spread out a little bit more this year. But as you do work one-on-one with a student, you need to know from your principals and the teachers in your classrooms, what does that look like for you? Do you need to stay real close to that student? Are you expected to stay away maybe and sit on opposite sides of a table or something like that? So I think we really have to think about that. Also, for kids standing in line, like I think about kids standing in line to use the restroom or something. What is that going to look like at our school? Are we going to have X's down on the floor and expect kids to stand that far apart or not? What does it look like on the playground too? And we're going to talk more about recess, but how far apart are we keeping students, and how far apart or how far away from students do I need to be? Or some things to ask your principal.
Steph, there's a question about what happens if a student runs up to give you a hug. And I'm just going to, that's going to happen with your little kids, and they do that because it's just what they do. I think if you can try, like I said, not to bend down, to, just hug them from the side and to just explain, say, we're trying not to hug each other because of, we don't want to give any, I don't want to scare them either about the germs, but I just think, it's going to happen.
And I was a huggy teacher. I stood at my door at the end of the day and I did hugs, high fives, or handshakes. And that was a part of our classroom. And I think also teach them the elbow bump. That's kind of social
air hugs.
Yeah, air hugs and elbow bump. And I think that's what's being socially acceptable now. And I think that those are probably some procedures that are going to be covered on those first few days of school, unfortunately. It's just a different year. So we're on to temperature checks. And I know here at the ESU, our policy is that we should take our temperature before we leave home. And if not, there's one of the thermometer gun type things at the door to take our temperatures. And every school is different on that too. We know certain schools in our area are going to temperature check every kid as they come in every day. I can imagine that they are going to be asking some paras to help with that. But other schools aren't going to do that. So again, you'll need to know your school's procedure on that. Are we temperature checking? But temperature checking yourself before you go to an area is is a smart decision. And last, sanitizing shared items. I don't know how it looks. You know, I work a lot with art teachers, and I think of all the supplies that they have to use with kids, and how do you sanitize that from one class to the next? And I think the answer might be having a para come help with some of that stuff. Do we have to sanitize, I'm sure, the whole lunchroom? Is that the cafeteria workers, or are paras helping with that? What are we sanitizing all through our classrooms, our hallways, those kinds of things? So I can imagine you might be asked to help with some of that, and you'll just need to know what are our procedures, where are our supplies, all of those things.
I know that some of the art teachers were talking about, like, they're going to have a bin for each class, but I know other teachers were talking about how we used to have shared markers, they're going to, you know, each student now is, you know, to try to bring their things. So like I said, it is, yeah, I just don't know what they're doing.
I'm going to hop back here. That reminded me, Tammy, on social distancing too, is, you know, if you have been a para that worked with lots of kids and lots of grade levels throughout the day and kind of classroom hopped all day, there might be a plan where you work with fewer students for longer periods of time, just limiting the exposure to different people for the kids and for you. So that's something to think about. That might be the plan for this year. And then there's just some certain times a day you need to kind of consider doing things differently. So busing is going to look really different this year. Some towns are not doing in-town busing. Some are sitting one kid in every other seat of a bus. And how do those buses get sanitized and things like that? So, and do buses hand out the masks for the day? So we have a lot of considerations with busing. And if you are a para who might even ride a bus to help monitor students, you might need to ask some questions there. Also, arrival is a time that we usually have crowded hallways, right? We have kids crowded, or sometimes like elementary kids all go into a gym or an area like that that gets crowded. What's that going to look like, and how's that going to be monitored? Then bathroom breaks. Again, I think that's a time that I like to just have my whole class go out to a bathroom break. We get it done in 5 or 10 minutes and we could all be back learning. But, you know, what does that look like, and how are those places sanitized throughout the day? Lunchtime. Again, some lunches are happening in individual classrooms. Other schools are using the lunchroom while we're still on green on the dial. So where is lunch? How is it passed out? I've even heard some paras are delivering milk to classrooms for milk break. And kind of consider there, do we need to have gloves available to us? Where will those gloves be kept? Will we be helping with that? So that might be a little bit of a change to your schedule throughout the year. Recess time. Beth Rammel told us that she was at a meeting where some experts from the Med Center said that recess equipment must be sanitized between uses. So any toys you have out there, balls, all those things. And I'm not sure about the actual equipment, thinking about monkey bars, swings. So that's something you'll want to be asking your administration about. And then of course, dismissal is just like arrival. It's a time with kind of busy hallways, right? So how are we going to dismiss to maintain social distance? So overall, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we need to make some lists of questions. Think about what's typically been your schedule and what areas you would have questions about. Check with your principal and teachers, and just overall be diligent and be flexible, right? We're going to be diligent to be safe, and be flexible because we know this year's different for everyone. Do we have any other questions about staying safe during COVID? Or comments or concerns?
I don't see any.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so along with this, much of when we quit coming to work back in March, here at the ESU, we were put into a spinning cycle of trying to help teachers and paras navigate through what virtual learning looks like for students. And so I just want to give you a couple quick things that might help you if you are put into, like, because teachers are I think a lot of them are going to, do the online or in person, but in case they have to go back online, and they might even start doing some of this in their classrooms. So I just wanted you to have a little bit of knowledge of some of the systems that they're using, and that way it'll just help you be familiar so you don't feel like you're maybe out in the cold about this. So this is your techno knowledge. So what of these are called learning management systems. You might hear people say LMSs. And many times what the schools right now are using, it's Google Classroom, which you can use if you have a Gmail account and your school has that G Suite. You can use Google Classroom. A lot of teachers are using that. And then Canvas, you'll have Canvas being used, and Seesaw. So those are the three that a lot of the schools are using right now, and we're helping support those. Then I'll talk just a little bit about Zoom at the end. So we'll go to the next slide. And on this one, when teachers think about, they need to think about these 5 things to help kids. What am I supposed to do? So if kids, when they're getting on online learning, what am I supposed to do? And you as a para, you're going to want to know what they're supposed to do so you can help guide them through that. Usually kids want to know, when is it due? Due dates are very important. They don't want to be late, or sometimes they want to be late, so you can help remind them of this. They want to know how they did. So they want to get that feedback from the teacher. And they also want to know, can you help me? Is there a place where I can go online that you're going to help me, or maybe Zoom with me to explain some things? And then what more can I do? We always have those overachievers who are trying to look for something else, the next thing to do. So that's just why they formed like this learning management system. It helps answer these 5 main important questions. So the next one we'll go with Google Classroom. Okay, it's used with a Google account. It's the stream. We'll look at that, we'll take a look. The stream is where they communicate. It's kind of like a Facebook page where you can go message back and forth. The classroom tab will be where there's instructions in there, assignments in there, teachers provide feedback. So when you hear that, you'll go, okay, this is where like their classroom's at. This is where like they'd have a folder. And then they'll have a to-do section where they can see what items are due. Also, it'll link to their Google Calendar, so that way they can see it 2 different places. Again, these are just information so that way you kind of know what you're looking for if you get placed in a classroom where teachers are expecting you to start helping with this learning management system. Okay, so the next, I put a screenshot in here. There's 2 different ways to get to Google Classroom. You can type in classroom.google.com and get there, and then you can, I'm thinking that we're going to suggest to your teachers that they add you as like a co-teacher or someone there that you can access students and when you help them. So we'll be talking about that with the teachers as well. Or up in here, when you have, and I call either the waffle or the tic-tac-toe board, when you're on your Google account, you can click right here on that waffle, and then it'll come to, click one more time, Steph. And it'll open up in here, and right down here is where you will see your classroom. So you can click on Classroom, and that's how you'll get into Google Classroom. So 2 different ways, either typing the address or going through your Gmail. Once you're in the classroom, it's going to look like this. Now, on this particular site, I have 1 lesson right here. So you'll see the lesson there on it. And if this student is in, let's say that they're an elementary student, they might have Mrs. Smith's reading, Mrs. Smith's math, Mrs. Smith's science. If they're a high school student in this, they might have the different subjects like English and World Lit and chemistry. So they'll click into whatever classroom they're in. The next place, once they click into that classroom, then this is what comes up first, and it's the stream. And it's right up here at the top. You can click that, Steph, and it'll kind of put a little arrow there.
So it's kind of like their dashboard, would you say? Kind of like,
right. They can communicate with the teacher, with other students, kind of know what's going on. Maybe there's something I don't understand, or I'm wondering where this is. This is kind of the place for that. So up here at the top again is the stream. Then if you go and you click on the classwork, that's where you'll find that it's all of their instruction. So it might be, they might have videos in here. They might have an assignment that they need to fill out. And a lot of times too, teachers will either give them the option that they can go and click on this, print it out, or they can click on it and fill it out online. And then they submit it for their assignment. So right in here, everything is housed right under here, so you don't have tons of places to click differently to go. So it's going to be all right here. And that's what we're really stressing to teachers, to get a good organizational system. You don't want lots of places that you have to go and click and, oh, now I can't remember this. It's too complicated. And we want it in one place.
I like seeing the dates over here too. When was it posted? When's it due?
Yes.
Anything helps
Right.
track of things.
So that's what's nice. Over here, right away in Google Classroom, you can see when it's due and if they have submitted it or not submitted it. Okay, so that's really nice. It's all in one place.
And kind of where it falls on the calendar here, and even drive like a folder for them to submit things. Is that right, Tammy?
Right, exactly. They have their own, it goes right then to the teacher. So this is just a nice simple system. So then if you go and you click up, I'll have you now, over here you see there's 3 little lines. Okay, I call them hammer lines, they're wide. So on the next slide, if once you click there, then it's going to take you to do. This is one more place. Did you get it over there?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm
okay.
responding.
You're fine. So go ahead and click the next slide, Steph. Then they can see that. So once you click on that, then it comes up to, you can go, whoops, to the to-do. So the to-do also shows them what's due, when the assignments need to be turned in. It's just one more place that you can go look. Again, I think this is powerful because kids are, they'll probably try, once they've done this, it's like anything else. It's like, they'll try to figure ways to get around it. So it's just, if you kind of know the 2 different ways, and again, this is all going to be posted into our site online that you can always go back and look for this for reference. Okay, so that was Google Classroom. Now you'll hear Canvas. Canvas is probably maybe a little more sophisticated, just has a few more bells and whistles. And a lot of our schools are just kind of learning this. So, but I just wanted you to be aware of it just to kind of see the format. So with Canvas, you can get there by going to canvas.instructure.com, and it's a live link. So when you get this, you can go ahead and click on there. Now, instead of using announcements for theirs, they use what's called a dashboard. You can see all of the courses right there. Okay, so that's what's the dashboard, is where you can see all of their courses, or said the stream, excuse me, dashboard and stream. Then they have announcements, and that's kind of where before stream can be announcements in Google Classroom, announcements is here for our Canvas. A way for communication to happen. Maybe a teacher just always has every day, this is what you're going to do when you come into my class. There's a bell ring or something to get you started. You need to answer this question. You need to make sure you have your notebook out. They might have that all up there all the time. And then they'll organize theirs into what's called modules. Google Classroom was classwork. Canvas is modules. They might have some pages here, discussions, assignments, quizzes, or their files. So when you open up Canvas, it's going to look like this. All this is down the side, and here's their dashboard. You can see here I have about 4 courses that are viewed when I open them up. So then the next slide will show if I open up one of these, I think I open up ditch the homework or ditch the drama. So right here, you come to your announcement page, and this will be anything that's new for the day, maybe for the week. And then down below, you can see, or excuse me, over to the side, and we're trying to tell teachers, don't make this so many tabs to click. Just use a home, announcements, and modules. Because again, simpler is better. If kids don't have to click around a lot, they can't say, I got lost, I didn't know where to go, I didn't get the right assignment. Just trying to take that piece out of their excuses. So if you look over here on this side, here is their to-do list. And again, it reminds you nicely of what's due, when it's due. Everything's right there when you come up on the first page. So we'll go to the next one. If you just click on announcements, then you'll only see that, so everything else is taken away and they're not distracted. And the next one, I showed a screenshot. If you click on modules, and again, with the teacher, we're really encouraging them to be very organized. That way, if they want to set it up week 1, week 2, week 3, that helps you too as a para to know where to go in to help that student. Now, the one that I don't know a lot about, I'm just learning about, is Seesaw. We see a lot of K2, K3 teachers using Seesaw. I went on and got an account last night. It's a free account right now, and I just signed up. So this is where the website is for that. You can go there, and I just clicked on and created a quick classroom. It's set up pretty much the same thing, except right here it has, I gotta look over here, the journal. It has a journal. So that's where they do a lot of collaborating back and forth, talking back and forth, where the other ones were Google had the stream and Canvas has the dashboard and announcements. Then over here you have activities. That's where a lot of their assignments are at. And then you have over here an inbox. Parents can talk to the teacher through inbox. And then the other one over here is skills. There's certain things to work on. Again, I'm not as familiar with this, but I wanted you to be able to kind of see this, just be familiar going, oh, okay, if I have an elementary teacher that's using this, I can at least know where to go to look to help the student. And we'll be giving probably more training with that as we go throughout the year.
And also Seesaw is one of those things that's used a lot to communicate with parents because it is used with younger kids. They, can say, hey, we've just uploaded this new project that your kid did, or this new reading sample, or whatever, to share a lot with parents. So.
And the question was, is this going to be on our website that you could refer back to? Yes. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes. And we're hoping, like I said, when we do our survey, if we see, and you guys will kind of do navigate through the year, if you see that, oh my gosh, our schools really require me to work a lot more with Google Classroom, I need some more training, we will absolutely do that for you. Even if it's like I have to come out and do a one-on-one with a school, a set of paras, I absolutely will do that and walk you through it slowly. I'm kind of that person. I'm like, I didn't really grow up knowing all this, but I have to have it a little bit slower so I get it. So we'll absolutely do that for you if the need is there. I just wanted you to kind of be aware of this so that way you don't feel like you're lost in the dark when teachers come out going, oh, this, that, the other thing. Or even if you as a parent are finding out, oh my gosh, I had 3 kids and they were all in 3 of these different systems. We're really encouraging schools to try to stick with one format, so that way it's not so confusing for parents, because it is overwhelming. The last thing we'll talk about is just Zoom. On the Zoom, there's just kind of some things to be respectful when kids are listening. If you have to monitor, maybe if teachers are doing this with their classrooms, or if you have to go to more virtual learning and we're not in school, it's to encourage that respect. Respect each other, give each other time to talk back and forth, to ask questions. Again, mute when you're not speaking, so that way it gets rid of all the background knowledge. You can hold down that space bar to talk briefly and let up, and it'll mute you back, or you can unmute the microphone. The video options, a lot of times too, if sometimes your video, wherever you're at, it's buffering and you don't have great bandwidth, it's a good idea to stop the video and just leave, like I said, a lot of times we've seen that here today. It just helps you get a better feed. And then also there's breakout rooms. Your teachers may use these if they want kids to go into groups, like if they were going into another room, but they're going to stay in virtual space. But you may be asked to monitor one of those rooms just to see what the kids are talking about. It's nice to have that extra adult in the room. So if that happens, again, you don't have to set up those breakout rooms, but you'll be asked to monitor just to listen in on the discussion and maybe keep it moving forward.
So you just click on the screen to say join the breakout room, and you click on the screen to say go back to my main meeting.
Yeah, it usually pops up to let you know that.
You don't get lost. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
So like I said, I hope I didn't want to overwhelm you, but just wanted to give you just some little bit of like, okay, I don't feel like I'm lost when the teachers come back and they're talking about this. And again, this will be up on our site, and we'll give you some just a very basic information.
Yeah, and I think we went through these things kind of quickly. So, you know, if you need to go back through, that's fine on your own time. But never worry about reaching out to us. We're here to help you. And even though it's kind of like a different time where we might all start to worry a little bit, this little guy will give you the encouragement to stick with it. We're going to listen to him, and then we're going to come back for a few more bits of information before we send you on your way.
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. I woke up this morning on my horizon. 3 little birds were on my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melody blowing true. And they said, this message is you. They said, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright.
Okay, he's just about too adorable. You can't even stand it, right? I don't ever tire of listening to him. Okay, you know how you get through a whole presentation and then you realize that there's one little bit of information you needed to add in? So I'm sure you're gonna give me the grace to just let me escape out of this for 1 second, right? And write something on my slide, because I want you to have our website, and our website has tons of information. And if you've been coming to our para trainings for years, you have this. But our website is bit.ly/paras of ESU8. And that's where you can find info all year long.
And even go back to watch some from last year. If you're new this year and you want to catch up a little bit, there's some really good topics. You don't have to watch everything, but maybe go back through and see if there's something you want to listen to or watch.
And the cool thing is we meet together all year long. So we talked about teamwork, right? This whole group of ESU8 paras, we are a team, right? We can help each other out. So I'm going to send out some emails. You could reply all to the whole group and say, hey guys, I need your opinion on this, or I need some advice, and feel free to do so. But we will meet up on Zoom in October, December, February, and April, or the even months. And we meet on the first Tuesday at 2. And we're always done by 3. And these are to discuss topics you'd like to know more about. And I'm just going to pop you out to our website for just a second here and show you some things.
And those Zooms are recorded. So we realize that because some schools just say, absolutely, we can't let you have that time, that 1 hour time during the day. You can go back and watch that. Some schools are very good about giving their paras that dedicated time. So, but we record that.
Some of you have like an early out day. I know in Plainview, they stay late on the early out day. So if I go up here and click on the 2020-2021 training, it takes me out to our page for this year. Here's the Zoom link. It's the same as today, right? It'll always be the same Zoom link. And then our August resources. Ooh. Well, I really thought that I put the presentation down here for us today, but I see it's missing. So you'll see our presentation on one side and our video on the other side. Okay, so presentation on one side, video on the other side, and we'll go ahead, we'll pop back to last year and show you an example of that. So in October, here was our presentation, and here is our video of that. Okay, so you might want to go back and say, hey, what was covered in December? Oh, Sonia talked about trauma then, and I really loved her today. I want to go hear more about this. I'm going to come back and see this recording. You can also find all of our recordings on our ESU8 YouTube page. So, alrighty, I'm going to hop back into our presentation for today. And we do have a survey, so we're going to go ahead and email that out to each of you. But if you are in the presentation, I think it just needed to load for a second, but if you are in there, you can go ahead and click this link. But I will email everyone later today. There are some of you who have an email that says you need to verify your email for ESU8, and we can't send you anything unless you verify that email. So if you could do that, that would help out. But we want to hear about what went well today, what we could improve upon today, and what you want to hear about each month. So it's really important that you do this survey for us. So check your email for this survey link coming across.
And I put on there to know your school district. Now, again, not because we want to pinpoint, but just if we see that like there are teachers from Boyd County that want to have training on interventions for a behavior student, then we can kind of start, gathering those resources together. It just kind of helps us know without having to, if you don't want to say, I'm Tammy Cheatham and I want this, it's just kind of an overall. So there's no way that we can know, to identify you. We just want to know what school district you're from, so that way we can kind of group things together.
And overall, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us, and even more, thank you for the job that you do every day. You are all superheroes in our minds, and so we hope you have a wonderful school year, and know that we're on your team. We're here. Here's our email. Please contact us if you need anything at all.
Yes, I mean, we are there for your support too. Sometimes people think, oh, it's just teachers, but really, if you want something, let us know and we'll be happy to come out and do something for you. So have a great school year. Hopefully it sails along smoothly.
Yeah. Faster than a speeding bullet, right? All right, guys, thank you. How you doing, Shelley?
Good.